last minute things. Okay, great. So thank you everyone for being here. I'm very excited to do this first series of our webinars, and we are going to be talking today about something that it's incredibly important for human health. I think this is one of the pillars of human health, and if not, maybe I'm not that off in my statement to say that this can be the main pillar of human health. Because we all heard about the microbiome to be at the center of human health, at the center of immune regulation, at the center of cellular regulation, DNA expression, so many things that are related to microbiome functionality. But behind the microbiome, there's an ecosystem. And that ecosystem will regulate what's going on in terms of the balance of the microbiome. And that ecosystem, in general terms, if it's well kept, if it's well regulated, you will have a nice composition, a nice pattern and balance of your microbiome. But if that balance is broken because the ecosystem is broken, and then we have an issue because you're not going to get microbes behaving and operating at the optimal level if you don't have a good setting to provide in terms of living conditions. And what I realized over the years was that the main root cause of imbalance to that terrain, to that environment where these microbes are living in, are toxins. And so the connection between toxicity and microbiome balance, it's completely entangled. And if we understand how things are modulated between these two areas, we have so much powerful tools, so much deep understanding of what could be the root cause of every chronic illness in this world. So without further ado, I'm going to share my slides and we can get started and we can dive deep in this topic. Hopefully everyone can see what I have here. Yes? All good? Perfect. So I call this intentionally unseen dangers because this is hidden. This is something that we don't really have a very clear clinical set of symptoms or conditions that are pointing out to all these type of imbalances. It's obscure in a certain way. There's no clear blood work panels. There's no really like upfront information you will get from your general physician to understand what's in terms is underlying these type of imbalancing factors. But they are all the time present. So this is a very concerning matter. For the people who doesn't know me, I'm the co-founder, lead scientist of Detox. We are passionate and dedicated to provide actionable, simple, but yet very effective tools to support detoxification for everyone that is struggling with this type of challenges from the environment, which unfortunately is the vast majority of the population today. I'm formerly trained as a dentist. I'm also a naturopathic doctor, and I've been collaborating with multiple companies for many years. I'm well versed in the microbiome world and been performing analysis and research and many other things in collaboration with multiple companies to expand the knowledge about that area. And now that became my ultimate realization in terms of understanding how deeply connected the microbiome is with environmental factors, especially toxins. So this is the way I like to start this conversation. We are very unaware of what's going on in our world, and we start our day in the best way possible. But unfortunately, the environment we live in today is not the same that we used to live 100 years ago. And so we can start the morning with something so simple as brewing our coffee and brushing our teeth and getting a shower. But then we start seeing that the coffee is loaded with mycotoxins and the toothpaste is loaded with fluoride and antimicrobials. And then your shower curtain is releasing VOCs and it's loaded with microplastics. And then you're inhaling all these different type of chemicals, which are, by the way, most of them hormone disruptors. And then you're going to eat your slice of bread with your breakfast. And if you did a good job finding a good bakery, you might be fine. But most of the cases, you're going to get glyphosate there, and God knows how many other organophosphates and pesticides, and eggs, which could be added with some very rancid oils that are used to feed those hens that are where you get those eggs from, etc. So even in those 30 minutes that you're starting your day, you get a tremendous amount of exposure. And we don't see these things. We just eat bread, drink our coffee, take a shower, and we think we're fine. The world's not anymore a place where we can trust fully in the things that are going on and rely on the organizations behind these systems to take care of all these elements that can create imbalances in your health. We need to be knowledgeable, and that's what I'm all about, to provide knowledge so you can become more proactive and protect yourself. I'm pretty sure everyone here already knows a lot about the gut microbiome. It has been such a trending topic, but just as a refresher, we have roughly 40 trillion microbes living in our body, and we have 1,000 species approximately from making all these 40 trillion microbes. A huge genetic repertoire. We have 100 times more genes in our human microbiome than in our cells. Actually, the load of genetic input we get from the microbiome is around 3.3 million non-redundant genes compared to our PD number, which is 20,000. We're literally a little bit more than a fruit fly in terms of genetic load in our cells, but we have this massive amount of genes coming from the microbiome that is regulating our epigenetic expression any given time of the day. So this plays a tremendous role in not only digestion, but immune regulation, keeping the barriers intact, neurological modulation, metabolic activation through GLP-1 and all these other things that are quite trending right now. And again, we also have a protective role coming from the microbiome, which is metabolizing xenobiotics. And we're going to talk about this a lot today. That's going to be our main topic. So basically, today, the microbiome is struggling. This is not something, again, that was happening in such a trending manner 100 years ago. The microbiome was pretty much thriving. It's a very resilient organism. But there's a lot of things nowadays that are affecting the microbiome balance, and especially three: high exposure to toxins, high accumulation of toxins, because toxins will mean nothing if they just come in and come out. It would be very, very unharmful if that will be the case, but most of them, they stay. And also we have the affected ability of elimination of these toxins out of our body. So all these creates a high toxic burden. And that's the problem, because we're not only getting exposed to, but we're also accumulating these things inside, and some of them, they never leave. And they should. These are uninvited guests, and we carry them in tremendous amounts all the time. Actually, CDC tells that every American carries 200 plus toxins in their bloodstream. That's a tremendous amount of toxins in your blood. I mean, it's not a minor number. And no wonder why we see these rising rates on autoimmune conditions, cancer, metabolic disease, spectrum disorders, neurodegeneration, to name a few. So the question that I got many years ago in my mind, that was a really important aha moment in my life, was how we're going to keep our biology helped and supported in this age of toxins we're living at. Because I call this age the age of toxins. It's really, I would like to say it's the age of information, the age of conscious elevation, whatever. But unfortunately, the it's also the age of toxicity. We have never been exposed to so many toxins as today, and it's not going to get better. It's actually getting worse. So when I talk about xenobiotics, what are these xenobiotics? Well, xenobiotics are foreign chemicals, things that are not made by the body. And this includes a variety of different types, and they have different molecular structures, different biochemistry, and they interact with our body and our body's pathways in a different form. So that's why it makes them so tricky, because most of these were never seen by the human body before. And now you get exposed to these things, and this is like a weird molecule, and the body has to figure out what to do about it. And in many cases, it will figure it out. And in many other cases, it will be just struggling, and that leads to bioaccumulation. So that's especially true when it comes to microbial harm. And that's where we're very concerned about, because then that harm leads to all these other immunological metabolic conditions. There's multiple categories of toxins, and there's multiple sources for them. Roughly, in a general sense, we can say we have heavy metals. Those are probably the most ancient ones that we know about. And they're actually naturally occurring on soil and other things, other environments. So it's not really that they're all bad all the time. It's just the elevated concentrations that we see in certain areas, or certain foods, or certain products. And also, of course, the bioaccumulation in soil and water because of the management, the poor management done by humans. Pesticides, there's a huge industry, a growing industry of manufacturing pesticides that are used in farming industry. Unfortunately, most of these things, they have a wide range of action. So it's not just that farm that is using them, it's the neighborhood, the neighboring farm, and maybe 10 miles down the road, that farm that is producing organic produce still gets negatively impacted by the usage of this type of pesticides. Plus the fact, and keeping this in mind, that 90% roughly of the US soil is used for producing non-edible produce. Things that are going to be used in the fuel industry or cosmetic industry or the clothing industry. And they can use whatever they want in that soil because it's not going to be consumed by humans. But the impact, the environmental impact that creates, and the bioaccumulation in the environment and the release of these toxins into the environment, it's outrageous. And unfortunately, the 10% that is trying to do something good is not enough to cope with this massive amount of usage of chemicals. Then we have all the industrial chemicals we know about, PFASs, plastics, etc. And that especially is true for the endocrine disruptive agents, the famous or infamous BPA, etc. So we have variety of different chemicals we have to deal with on a daily basis. Now, that brings a biological cost. There's a price we pay for using all these toxins. Yes, great, we can manufacture things in a cheaper way or simpler way, but there's a biological input in our own bodies, and then our cells are struggling, our microbiome is struggling. So mitochondria now they're not functioning at the optimal level. Digestion gets affected. The immune system is not working properly. The hormones are not working properly. We get them blocked or impaired. And of course, that leads to chronic immune activation. And remember, the most severe chronic illnesses are related to this ongoing activation of the immune system that is not under control or is getting triggered on a daily basis by an unknown or external elements. So in a glance, this is what happens. I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful diagram I found about how environmental pollutants are activating or inactivating transcription factors leading to carcinogenesis, how they're damaging the DNA directly, how they're leading to they're directly attacking our liver and also our kidneys, our lymphatic system, our brains, our heart, and that leads to multiple different types of chronic illnesses, all by creating direct damage or creating an overexpression of radicals, free radicals, or by altering our DNA or triggering immune responses beyond the normal level, especially with TNF alpha, interleukin 1, 6, and 8 elevations that are, we know, very nasty for everything in terms of our immune balance. It throws away the Th1, Th2 balance, and we got this dominant Th2 state where we can't leave if the exposure stays for good. And that's unfortunately the case right now. Though, now the great part about the microbiome, just to give a bright side on this conversation, is that the microbiome, yes, gets affected by these toxins, but also the microbiome can help you reducing the toxicity from your body. It has abilities for manufacturing or transformation of different pollutants and toxins into more benign compounds that can be excreted easily. It can degrade actually or transform toxins so they can become non-toxic. So the microbiome, when it's in balance, can help you a lot to move forward through all these exposures. So there's different ways. There are different ways that the microbiome does this, and we're going to talk about that. But first, the way that toxins affect the microbiome or disrupt the microbiome are multiple. They can kill microbes directly. They have antimicrobial potential. We know that from pesticides and herbicides, especially. There's also a metabolic pathway interference. We block their metabolic pathways. It's especially true with glyphosate and the shikimate pathway. We can also select certain groups of microbes, and we can make them more resistant. And those resistant microbes now become dominant, and now they take over the composition of the microbiome, and then we get these stubborn microbial patterns that we can't really get out of. That's why some people are using probiotics and symbiotics and postbiotics and millions of other strategies that they're meant to work, and they're not working. Or they step out of those protocols and they go back to square one. Why? Because the toxicity factor was never removed. And that's important to consider in any microbiome balancing protocol. And again, also they affect immune and inflammatory modulation, and therefore the cells in our body, they can't really regulate microbial patterns properly. And of course, all the host environment, the signaling, the pH balance, etc., even nutrient uptake gets impaired by the exposure to these toxins. So basically, in a very simple way, now the metal or any toxin that comes in can go in two directions. Either you get this protective mechanism coming from the microbiome if your microbiome is resilient and balanced enough, or you get a change in the composition of the microbiome, or either an actual metabolite that is more damaging than the actual parent compound that got in your body, and now you get dysbiosis and damage mediated by the toxin that you got. And this is in terms of metals, but actually applies to any type of toxins we're getting in our system. That's why I like this quote. I love to read, and The Little Prince was one of my favorite books as a kid. I never fully understood that book, honestly. It's quite complex. It seems like so childish, but it is way more than that what is presented in those pages if you start reading between the lines. And actually, it's funny because it's actually said inside the book, what is essential is invisible to the eye. And I believe right now we live in a world where the most important things we should be mindful about are actually invisible to the eye. We're not getting hit by rocks or getting damaged by natural disasters. What is really impacting our health right now, it's the things that we're not seeing. And unfortunately, that's the reason why a lot of people get away with this in terms of releasing them into the environment. So let's talk a little bit more about heavy metals and the gut microbiome. So the heavy metals, they do have an antimicrobial activity per se. So they produce reactive oxygen species, and they will harm cells across the board, including microbes. But also they impair the enzyme activity and protein functionality of the microbes. That also includes the compromise of the cytoplasmic membrane integrity. So they literally break down microbes. They destroy microbes from the anatomical structure. and they damage the genetic expression. And this happens both for microbes and human cells. And the genes get altered, so now you don't have that protein synthesis working properly. You don't have mitochondria being reproduced, and then your metabolic performance drops. And if that is in the best scenario, your cell or your microbe didn't get killed in the process. So definitely very damaging. We have a lot of journals mentioning this. We have in this case, we know that exposure to heavy metals will disrupt the composition of the gut microbiota and leads to dysbiosis. And in the conclusion in this research, then 20 and actually it was 2025 was it's pretty recent that the exposure to high levels of arsenic, lead, and mercury, it will increase pathogen of overabundance, and that will lead to leaky gut, oxidative stress, and diseases related to inflammation, including IBD and, unfortunately, cancer. We know there's a relationship between colorectal cancer and the exposure to all these toxins. And the probiotic treatment and nutritional strategies with high fiber, so important fiber. Now everyone's super driven to use these carnivore ketogenic diets. We need fiber, guys. This is one of the most biggest takeaways of what I'm saying right now. Fiber is critical to feed your microbiome. 70% of your microbiome can't eat anything else, only non-soluble fibers and complex carbs. If you don't give them those, they're going to starve. Starvation in the microbiome, not good. Doesn't look pretty down the road. So with the following diets and improving these elements can improve the conditioning for the microbiome to cope with these type of toxicity elements. We have also the methyl mercury demethylation and amylation in humans and assessing that with the microbiome perspective. And the conclusion here was that the gut microbiome will harbor a potent demethylation activity independent from the host. That's critical. It's not about what your liver does or what your cells are doing. This is independent from the host, and it will contribute greatly to the overall elimination of methyl mercury from the body. That means that you have a good, nice, resilient microbiome. You will cope better with methyl mercury exposure. That's a huge, huge statement was found here. And again, this is, I don't have the year of this, but this is pretty recent. Where's the year here? Okay, I thought I had it. Again, another study done in 5 African origin populations about toxins, toxic metals, and the impact on the gut microbiota. Again, here we see how type 2 diabetes mellitus risk increases in these populations when they get exposed to significant metals, amounts of metals. That means your metabolic health gets impaired by the exposure to all these metals. So this is not minor. This is a chronic, very complicated disease. And one of apparently triggers to develop or worsening of this condition is the exposure to heavy metals. Arsenic. Arsenic is so complicated, not only because it's a cancer risk factor, but also because it's everywhere. Soil is so contaminated with arsenic today. Like we eat rice or things with rice or things with other produce or things that are coming from the soil. And it's so hard to not get arsenic in those foods. Even organic crackers for kids, and they have been tested and they're loaded with arsenic. So because all these rice crackers that they seem so naive, so innocent, they're not so much. So the highlights here is that the exposure of arsenic perturbed or damaged the gut microbiome composition. And again, we start getting all these altered pathogen patterns, and where we have these more inflammatory or pro-inflammatory patterns if you get exposed to these metals compared to the populations that they don't get exposed in significant amounts. So basically, when it comes to heavy metals, as I said before, there's a bidirectional approach. Your gut microbiota could be the best friend or the best foe, depending on the status or the baseline status by the time you start getting exposed to these heavy metals. Now, think about for a minute the moment we are born. If we decide to go through C-section or vaginal delivery, or if we get breastfed or not, those things will dictate your microbiome status in a huge way. So from early moments of our life, and even before in the placenta, but I don't want to go that deep in the analysis right now. But even from the moment of birth and for the first couple of years of your life, you can actually do something that will determine the status of your microbiome and how well protected you will be from these environmental challenges. It's not a minor decision. It can set the ground for success or for increased risk of getting chronic illnesses down the road. Now, we know probiotics can support a balance of the microbiome and therefore improving the coping mechanisms towards exposure to all these toxins. Now, the other thing about the microbiome is that they can chelate metals, as I mentioned before. They can cope with exposure, and actually some of these microbes, they have something called cytophores that they will grab heavy metals and they will create these insoluble complexes, so they will be scavenged out of the body. Actually, Oxalobacter formigens, which is managing oxalates inside the gut microbiome, can also help eliminating other metals like lead, for example. And so increasing, and this is, oxalates are demonized. Small incorporations of oxalate-rich foods can increase Oxalobacter formigens populations, and then you have a better microbiome status for coping with exposure to all these heavy metals. Sulfide, so hydrogen sulfide producing bacteria also, they can be great for scavenging heavy metals. So not all these hydrogen sulfide producing bacteria are bad for you. Actually, we need them. That's a whole conversation about hydrogen sulfide and how it boosts the mitochondrial function up to a certain level. So don't think that all hydrogen sulfide is bad, and not all methane is bad, by the way. This is a side comment. And so these sulfur-reducing bacteria can actually modulate and excrete heavy metals like arsenic and other types of damaging molecules inside the gut, including mercury, by the way. Now, that leads me to another category, which are pesticides and herbicides, which are pretty famous. Now, I know the most trending or probably the most known today is glyphosate. Glyphosate interferes with a pathway that's called the shikimate pathways, which is the main pathway most of the bacteria in the body uses for producing essential amino acids. Of course, if you don't produce essential amino acids, you die. There's no way that you can survive without them. But the problem is that many bacteria, which are not the most benign for us or the ones we want to have in larger amounts, they don't rely on shikimate pathway to produce their amino acids. And therefore, not only glyphosate kills a lot of the beneficial strains of bacteria in the gut, but also creates a dominance on the ones that are a little bit more inflammatory and not so benign. So it creates not only an antimicrobial effect, but also a dysbiotic effect, which is even worse than just the antimicrobial effect. That also the all organophosphates in general leads to alterations in the microbial communities, and that leads to, of course, dysbiosis across the board, and that is beyond even the gut microbiome. Every microbiome in the body gets negatively impacted by the exposure to these organophosphates. In this case, low-dose glyphosate exposure alters gut microbiota composition and modulates gut homeostasis. This is telling you that the whole microbiome balance and the inflammatory status of the body will be changed not only by big amounts of glyphosate exposure, just resilient, like silent, low-grade exposure will create this. And that's exactly what everyone in this country is getting. We're getting a low degree exposure of glyphosate that is continuous, and it unfortunately is affecting the microbial diversity every single day. Now, um, another organophosphate is chlorpyrifos. Chlorpyrifos it's another very ubiquitous, commonly used organophosphate in the farming industry, and the problem with this pesticide is that they um, they um, they affect the blood-brain barrier and the gut lining barrier. So we have permeability now in place. So now imagine these microbes producing things that are more inflammatory or more toxic, and now we don't have the barrier containing these byproducts. That leads to a systemic issue down the road. So we have to be mindful not only about what's going on in the gut microbiome, but what else is happening around our body. Barriers in the body are very important, and we need elements to support the integrity of these barriers. And again, unfortunately, we're getting more damaging elements than supportive elements to keep those barriers intact. We need a certain opening and closing of those barriers on demand. The problem is when they stay open all the time. That's the issue. And unfortunately, again, most of these toxins, they can cross everywhere. They have mycotoxins, for example, or ionophores. They can cross to any place of the body. There's no limits. And that it's quite concerning in terms of the implications at the cellular level. Now, on microbiome gut axis brain, when it comes to pesticide exposure, we see that there's a significant change in metabolites like tryptophan that leads to alterations on the neurotransmitter production, serotonin, especially in this case, but not exclusively. We know dopamine and GABA also, they get negatively impacted by the exposure to all these pesticides. Plus the fact that we are creating more toxic populations that are more driven to produce lipopolysaccharides or release lipopolysaccharides in large amounts, leading to and metabolic endotoxemia related issues. So all these things also will affect the organ performance, immune system, etc. We know that the main driver of cholestasis in the liver are lipopolysaccharides. So if we have too many of those released in any given time, cholestasis will occur. So this is a great image. Is my image getting in the way of the image? My no? Okay, good. I thought my video was getting in the way. So the effect of these pesticides we're getting exposed to on a daily basis, it will alter the communication between the gut and the brain. Now, we know today we see a lot of issues in terms of neurological conditions that are on the rise, and also ADHD and spectrum disorders. Now, the reality behind all this is that, and let me see if I can, there we go. The reality is that all these herbicides and pesticides, let's say for a minute, just let's focus on glyphosate, but that's not exclusively related to glyphosate. It will alter the microbial composition, and then we have altered pathways on tryptophan and other types of metabolites that are produced by the microbiome. And then that alters the neurotransmitter levels, especially serotonin and dopamine in the brain, which we see in animal models will lead to all these type of abnormal behaviors like anxiety-like behavior, depression, all the motoric system, the fine motor skills, social behavior, etc., are impaired to a certain level. That means that if we take this information and we put it side by side with what we're seeing now, getting increased in the statistical numbers with all these type of neurological conditions in humans, there's a very direct correlation. I don't think that they're not separated. I think this is just two sides of the same coin. These are the same patterns we're seeing in animal models, we see them in humans that are getting exposed to the same type of disruptive agents on an ongoing basis. BPAs, well, bisphenols in general, BPA being the most famous one. Bisphenols are plasticides, are additives that are added to plastics to give them different physical properties. They're We have different types of ones, types of bisphenols. BPA, again, most famous one. Now we see a lot of things claiming BPA free. Problem is that they're replacing BPAs with other ones like BPS or BPF. We have no clue, actually, we have little clue if these guys are same or worse than the BPA damage, the BPA, the damage that the BPA creates in the microbiome and in the body. The little information we have is that BPS and BPF and these bisphenol alternatives to BPA are actually worse. So really the only solution is avoiding these bisphenol containing plastics at all. Don't even touch them. The problem is right now we have microplastics everywhere. That's a reality. You're not going to get away from those. It's impossible. They're everywhere. Same with glyphosate. So the only thing we can do is actually, when we can make decisions, make the right ones. Do not use plastics as much as you can, but still you're going to get exposed to this type of chemicals, no matter what. That's impossible to avoid. So we know that the microplastic exposure leads to microbial dysregulation and metabolic changes from the microbiome standpoint. And that, unfortunately, leads to very concerning health outcomes like colorectal cancer, IBD, IBS, colitis. Colitis will be probably the less severe, but most of them are pretty severe, pretty concerning conditions. So, and again, we get them from everywhere. So we can really escape from these guys. And on the gut lining area, you can see how they influence not only metabolite production in terms of short-chain fatty acid production, they also altered the aryl hydrocarbon receptors, which will lead to systemic inflammation down the road. An alteration of the microbiome composition, making it more inflammatory than the standard. And on the other side, we will have all these different types of biomolecules, metabolic pathways that are going to be downregulated, especially glucose and lipid management, which will lead, of course, to metabolic conditions down the road. This review is revising the impact of microplastic in the human gut microbiome. And the conclusion is that microplastics across all the studies that they review, they consistently associated with microbial dysbiosis, reduced microbial diversity, impaired short-chain fatty acid production, and altered immune system and metabolic pathways. PFASs, these are quite famous right now. They come from different types of sources: pesticides, packaging, firefighting foams, anything that has been coated with this type of chemicals that needs to be waterproof or has to have certain physical properties, including paints and even cosmetic products like shampoos are loaded with these things. Unfortunately, also tap water is loaded with PFASs nowadays. It's very rare to find tap water not contaminated with PFASs. There are many types of PFASs. Some are large molecules, some smaller molecules. The reality is that all of them are damaging to a certain extent. The little ones are even more damaging because they can cross easily every barriers in the body, but everything, unfortunately, gets in the body and bioaccumulates, not only by cells of our body, but also by human gut bacteria, which affects the the affects the whole balance of them, and also unfortunately leads to more pro-inflammatory patterns. These guys, they do affect the efflux pumps in the gut lining, so we're less able to push them out. This is very concerning because that's our protective system. If the efflux pumps are not working properly, everything can get in, and that's unfortunately one of the effects of PFAS in the body. Now, we see also that this exposure of PFAS leads to insulin resistance and obesity, which we mentioned before, due to the alterations in the management of glucose and lipids in the gut. Mycotoxins, these are naturally occurring. From all the things I've been mentioning, these are actually naturally made. And they're fine outside the body. I mean, in the environment, they're produced to control bacterial populations, to take over where mold is growing. Of course, the main place you will see that happening is in the tree cortex, because mold loves cellulose. But now, because of the insulating materials we use and all these other new modern construction materials, and the forced air on the side that's being used widely, we get bioaccumulation of mycotoxins inside the house and many other places, and now we get exposed to a tremendous amount of them compared to the normal environmental exposure we should get. Mycotoxins, unfortunately, they're both antimicrobial and also immune disruptive elements. So we know that deoxynivalenol, for example, in the body will create alterations in the microbiome profile, and therefore there's some metabolic biomarkers like, for example, phenylalanine and tryptophan, which are so important, of course, that will drop because of the exposure to these type of toxins. But we also know that bile mobilization, bile functionality, actually, the whole biliary tree can get affected by the exposure to certain mycotoxins, like, for example, aflatoxin B1, ochratoxin also. It's another huge one that affects the performance of the organs in the body, etc. So that's a long conversation. I don't want to get deeper in the mycotoxins. That will be another 2 hours webinar. But the main problem is that mycotoxins, especially for sensitive populations, for people who have genetic SNPs in place, which is roughly 25% of the American population, they will really suffer from this elevated exposure to these toxins. Now, last part, I want to briefly mention endotoxins. Yes, they're made by bacteria. They're not xenobiotics by definition. But unfortunately, when all these other toxins are changing the patterns within our microbiome, we get these more gram-negative dominant patterns. And these gram-negative dominant patterns, they will release more endotoxins on a daily basis, which will lead to a cholestatic liver. Now, you're trying to detoxify from these things, and the same pathways you're using for detoxify from all these molecules are actually getting impaired by the microbial changes that are created by these toxins. So you can see that the same toxins that are creating damage at the microbiome level, also they're fundamentally affecting the way we can eliminate them out of the body, and that creates the vicious circle. So when someone asks me, should I be concerned about toxicity? Yes, unfortunately, today in this modern world, yes. There's no way that no one is escaping from this type of alterations to a certain degree, and that has so many ripple effects inside the system of our body. So we have enough evidence to see that the microbiome perturbations can alter the way that we manage xenobiotics. And it could be, again, a bidirectional approach. And if we support the microbiome, definitely we'll have better outcomes in terms of managing these toxins. And every toxin we have in our body will tell you a story of imbalance. And that's where we need to focus on, to grab our biology and rewrite that story from a toxicity to a resilient story. And that's where we use our protocols for. And that leads me to the final part, which is detoxification pathways. Now, there's many ways we can improve our natural detoxification pathways. Knowing the liver and the kidneys are the main organs related to detoxification, but every single cell of your body is actually doing a lot of effort removing these toxins out of the system. And we have these three phases that probably all of you know, phase one, phase two, phase three, where we're going to grab a molecule that we want to eliminate. We're going to bite a chunk out of this molecular structure to make it more reactive. That's why phase one needs to be modulated very efficiently. Otherwise, this molecule becomes very reactive and can become very damaging for you. But because we have this second step in the process that we call conjugation, now we grab a molecule, typically an amino acid, and we put that amino acid on the top of this activated molecule, and we make it water soluble, and now can leave through our phase three transporters and get out of the body. That's the ideal scenario. Unfortunately, a lot of things can go wrong if we're not addressing these pathways properly and supporting this properly. So the microbiome can be a great ally in this process, and it can help converting these molecules to more benign forms and also scavenging directly these molecules out of the GI system. Remember, the GI system is one of the primary places all these toxins are going to land. So it makes total sense to support it in the best way we can. And also, of course, exercise, dietary fiber. Again, we can't be scared. We can't take out carbohydrates from our nutritional guidelines. Phytonutrients, everything that's loaded with these beautiful phytochemicals, polyphenols, sulforaphane, etc., that helps us upregulating these pathways to make them better. Hydration. And then when I'm talking about hydration, I'm not drinking water alone. We're talking about water with minerals in regular amounts throughout the day. It doesn't make sense to drink 12 ounces of water in one sit and then don't drink water for 8 hours. It just doesn't work that way. We need to slowly hydrate. And remember, foods can also be a great source of water, like from coconut water to fruits and vegetables. They're loaded with hydrating molecules. So consider those as another source of hydration. And of course, if you cook them or just process them in any way, you lose that ability. So raw vegetables and fruits are amazing for hydrating the body. And of course, try to avoid as much as possible the exposure, which is kind of like common sense nowadays. Now, there's some probiotics we can use for this process to support this process. There's some strains we know that they have very effective systems for counteract different types of toxins and in the body, like Lactobacillus plantarum and brevis and rhamnosus, and also spores, which I'm huge about. I'm always collaborating with Microbiome Labs. It's a company I like so much, and they have these probiotics they formulated to boost many of the metabolic aspects of our microbiome, and therefore improving the coping mechanisms we need for adjusting to these modern challenges. And then also increasing, as a consequence, our keystone species that also they have a very direct impact in the way we can cope with these metabolic needs, and especially things like proacylfactorin prounitzi for production of short-chain fatty acids, especially butyrate, Archaemycin eosinophila for the integrity of our gut barrier, mucin-2 modulation, and Lactobacillus plantarum for scavenging directly heavy metals. Those things are fantastic. Definitely something we should consider. Immunoglobulins are great for coping with the antigens, especially endotoxins, that we can get from these imbalanced microbiome patterns, so we can reduce cholestasis and improve our elimination of toxins down the road. So that said, then we have our systems. Now we thought, okay, what we know, it's very important. We have so many routes and many things we can do on a daily basis to improve detoxification. But we can take this one step further. We know that biology knows how to heal, how to manage this, but sometimes the tools are missed. And this is where we sat down and we engineer everything we do today with Detox U for a year long, and we start creating all these formulas, not only for supporting, but also for coping with modern life challenges, which are commuting, taking kids to the school, just meetings and work-related activities, or your daily life activities like exercising, etc. We need protocols that work for us, not us working around protocols. That's not going to work, not going to pay off, it's not going to be compliant. So knowing all these phases and how they work and what they need in terms of support, we created a system that mainly focus on empowering your own biology. So we're not doing anything outside the box. We're just creating the most optimal scenario for your body to perform at its best. And so we're supporting, again, not forcing. We're not trying to push anything in. We're not trying to make something super strong. We're just going into the cells, into the receptors, and activating these beautiful pathways we have to optimize performance. So we have different formulas for this pathways. So I'm about to when I hit an hour. Yes, give me a few minutes and I'll jump right away. I'm seeing you. Thank you, Danny, for reminding me. So the main product bundle we created is the general detox bundle. This it's a bundle that mainly works around the excretion of toxins and binding of toxins. So it's a two-product system that improves the way we handle toxins of all kinds and reduces the ability of recirculating these toxins and creates a very safe environment for grabbing the toxins at the GI level and excrete them out of the body without creating collateral damage. So it's very, very simple, very effective in its approach, but yet very comprehensive to get things done without losing any step of the process. Before moving forward, I want to make a pause here. Joining us, it's our sales manager, Courtney. I want to all of you get introduced, to introduce her to all of you. So she's going to be your point of contact in anything you need, affiliate accounts or wholesale accounts. You can tell a little bit more about it.
Yeah. Hey,
I'll
everybody.
make a pause before continuing.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Haroldo. I'm Courtney Gaderos. Some of you may have emailed back and forth with me a little bit. I'm part of the sales team here. I'll keep it brief. I know Dr. Haroldo has a few more slides to get through, but I just wanted to share some details for anyone who might be interested in implementing Detox U into their practice. So there's two ways you can partner with us. The first one is our affiliate program. We call it our practitioner partner program. This is going to be the more hands-off option. So if you just refer patients to Detox U, you'll have a customized link. They'll shop through that link, and then you'll earn commission on those sales. Option two is the wholesale program. This is going to be a better fit for clinicians who prefer to order their products directly and then dispense them through their practice. So those are the two options. We'll be sending an email after this webinar with all of that information, but I will also drop it in the chat and you can use those links to apply. I added my email there as well. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. I'd be happy to help you out, but I will hand it back to Dr. Geraldo.
Oh, well, I'm muted. Thank you so much. Yes,
Yeah.
anything you need, she's going to do a great job taking care of anything related to our accounts and any inquiries you have product-wise. I'm always available as well. So just let me know. I know that We are re-engineering the approach, and it's quite novel, the approach we created. And I'm here to answer any questions. Um, Again, uh, I'm all about simplicity. And with my training, of course, my background, and all the years I've been working around the microbiome as well, I realized that cellular level detoxification, it's in a way very complex, but at the same time, pretty straightforward if we understand the pathways and the receptors and everything that relates to how the body operates. So you look at this diagram right now, and you can see that the faces are pretty clear. It's not that linear. I wish it was, but it's still, there's a consistency in the way that all these toxins are managed, and going from, again, activation, make it polar, make it more active, and then the conjugation until we get to the excretion pathways. Now, what we do here is that we created one product that checks all the boxes to mobilize toxins from a lipophilic, non-polar form into a form that can be excreted without causing harm. And there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of beauty, I will say. I think I can't put it in a different way. Um, in botanicals, they're naturally occurring in nature that activate and enhance and optimize pathways within this mechanism. And when you look at this approach in full, because of the overlap in the functionality of these chemicals and the phytochemicals and botanicals, we can really integrate an ingredient system that takes care of everything all together. So this is the multi-phase detox support that I created with the help of a few food chemists, and we designed this to make it simple, very effective at the same time. Now remember, your body knows how to get activated by this. Nothing needs to be pushed, nothing needs to be forced. Receptors know exactly what to take from these botanicals in full and how to take out whatever is not needed. That regulatory system that exists in any membrane of your body should be respected always. And so we know that the kidneys are the liver is a huge piece of the puzzle, but also the kidneys. And then we thought, okay, but we need to make this very comprehensive. So we support all phases of detoxification from a biliary tree standpoint. What about the kidneys? Well, we added support to the kidneys. And what supplies all these toxins to the kidneys? Well, it's the circulatory system and the lymphatic system. So now we added support to the lymphatic system and circulation. So we put ingredients also in this formula that allows drainage, allows urasis to go in a more efficient way without mineral loss, which is very important, and also supporting lymphatic movement. So we have all these things now coming in and properly managed in the proximal tubes and excreted throughout the urine as well as the stools, so they don't stay in your body and you never see these toxins again in your life, hopefully. And at the cellular level, that's so critical. You can't do anything if the cells are not working. And we have this beautiful NRF2 system that is produced on an ongoing basis, but always blocked by KEAP1 unless there's a triggering element. And we know how to use this system for our needs to activate our antioxidant response elements. But even more, NRF2 also will stimulate biogenesis of new mitochondria. So we're producing more mitochondria, and also we're protecting the cells with this biochemical pathway. And so we added things to support this part with alpha lipoic acid and PQQ and phosphatidylcholine and reduced glutathione. So now the cells are also protected. And yes, it's all included in the remover formula. It's it's a very complex formula, and there's only one product in the world that does all this all together with one in a single product form. So the mechanistic view here, we have control activation of phase one, increased conjugation capacity, improved transportation and elimination from the bile and kidneys, and also mitochondrial resilience that prevents the detox fatigue and also protects our cells from any collateral damage we're getting, especially from reactive molecules from phase one. Now, paired to that, we have the phase three phase, that is the elimination phase. Here is where things can go wrong. We push everything out from the kidneys, from the biliary tree into the duodenum, and it's going to get in the GI tract, ready to leave, is packed, is already conjugated, and we expect these things to get out of the body. But where things fail, when we have poor microbiome balance, when we have leaky gut, then we get reabsorption or maybe some high levels of strobolome and beta-glucuronidase levels being increased. Now we're breaking the bonds, we're releasing molecules, we're sending these molecules back to the bile, to the liver through secondary bile acid recirculation. And that starts the process all over again. Is using a lot of resources from our body, definitely not a nice place to be. And this is what we want to prevent. That's why we created the binder. So the binder will bind any type of toxin because it has a very comprehensive mineral blend that grabs both anoic and cationic type of molecules. So everything in the spectrum of negatively charged or positively charged molecules can be grabbed with different types of minerals that are included in this formula, but also allows bile acid elimination and improves also sulfur tolerance because we decided that we want to take this one step further and also support the cofactors. So we added in the remover betaine or trimethyl glycine, and also we added in the binder, we added molybdenum for sulfur improvement or sulfur tolerance. And also we added fulvic acid from Shilajit. So we have a really nice Shilajit there donating fulvic acids to protect the cells and protect the gut barrier and also replenishing minerals. And aloe for increasing and improving motility. So as you can see, the advanced mineral binding matrix with all these minerals is what I call the safety net. And we can bind so many different things across the board with this blend. And then we have the metabolic detox cofactor complex where we added Shilajit, aloe, and molybdenum and makes it so comprehensive. Really, it's hard that something can escape this route when you use this type of products. Now, last, we have some focus products. We created 3 focus products because we thought, okay, there's some people, and a lot of people actually know the exposure they're getting, or they're concerned about a very specific type of pollutants. So we can improve that part and support them a little bit more specifically. And we created 3 categories of products: mold focus, heavy metal focus, and industrial focus. They all have different blends of botanicals, and all of them, they're more specifically created to support the elimination of these specific categories of toxins when needed. The heavy metal focus bundle will help you improve the binding process of metals in the gut, but also allows your body to release these toxins from tissues that are typically storing these metals so they can be sent into the circulation and they can be grabbed by the strong binders of the binder. I know a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't use chlorella or cilantro because they're weak binders and they can recirculate toxins. Yes, that it's true if you don't have another set of binders in place. But because we do, this becomes pretty safe. We remove, we recirculate, we send to the circulation these metals, we remove them from the tissues, and now they're ready to be captured and eliminated out of your body. That's the beauty of this system, that it's a very, very specific add-on to the already very efficient system we created with General Detox Bundle. So you have modified citrospectin here, sodium alginate, chlorella, cilantro, parsley, horsetail, alfalfa, pretty much metal binding, chelation, mobilization, and tissue support that is needed for heavy metals. Then we have industrial focus, which It's a main product that we created to protect yourself from fumes from industrialized zones or big cities or people who are commuting long distances or traveling frequently. This is where you get support at the cellular level to improve even more your NF2 pathways, your phase 2 detox, and also protecting your lungs tissues, which are highly damaged by all these type of volatile airborne pollutants. So here we added more support for glutathione production with glycine and cysteine, but we also added sulforaphane donors, black kale, which is going to improve tremendously the sulfur pathway that is so needed for environmental pollutants, artichoke extract for improving bile flow, ginger as an anti-inflammatory, as a sweet bitter, promotes also better functionality at the GI level, and then rhubarb, feverfew, and yerba santa for circulation, inflammation, and respiratory support. So we have a very well-rounded formula that helps you coping with these modern challenges. And last but not least, the mold focus bundle. This is a microbial balancing formula. Yes, it was initially formulated for mold-related issues, mold toxins especially, but we took this a little bit further in the approach, and now it becomes a microbial balancing formula. So you have all these different botanicals that will support the microbial control that's typically very impaired in people who are suffering from mycotoxin exposure, especially, again, genetic sensitive people, and also supports your immune system that you can become more resilient, because that's where mold toxins go after the most, to your immune system. They send it, throw the balance all over the place. So we have a lot of antioxidants and polyphenols and other donors that will balance the microbiome and improve your immune system functionality. The most important, another very important part, all the focus formulas include the cellular detox matrix, which is the combination of alpha lipoic acid, phosphatidylcholine, and PQQ that we have in each of our formulations, except for the binder. So every time you add one more product, you're actually compounding the potency to make it even greater, to support your cells in a better way. The last thing I want to show you, I made this diagram actually, and in the glance, you can see, like from a very high yield view, how everything is integrated, how everything it's connected. You can't go shy. You can't go with the shortcut. You can't just use a few products and think this is going to support your pathways all the way. You need to be very comprehensive if you really want to support your detoxification pathways. You just can't allow yourself to choose or this or that. Maybe this is all in or nothing at all. That's the way I see detoxification support. That's why these two products, they give you everything you need. And you can't really decide in individual basis what you use, because the idea is that you get all the support needed all together. So it's simple for you, it's effective, and it gets the job done without falling short in any specific aspect of the detoxification process. The dosage, typically 2 capsules a day, twice daily for all the products, every product. And we recommend taking them 60 minutes before or after meals at least, and medications as well, or even nutritional supplements to not reduce the availability of those in the body. And the binder has a time release capsule. So you can take all the products together. The binder will release its content separately from the rest. So that's another simplification we added into our formulas, which is a great, actually, addition. Timing things separately always reduces compliance. And again, these are dietary supplements. They're not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Responses may vary. Great thing. Thank God we have amazing feedback so far from the people who are using these products, and we expect more to come. And again, the only thing that I will say, it shouldn't be used if the person is pregnant or breastfeeding, and also, of course, if there's any medical condition consult with your doctor before using any of these products. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to me and for being interested in everything we're doing. And yeah, let's jump into questions right away into Q&A. We have some minutes. I took a lot of time, I know. But well,
Yeah, let
it's
me read those off for you. We got some good ones coming in.
great. How
Uh,
long? Okay,
have
it took 50 minutes more than what I planned. So I did almost great.
in classic Dr. Geraldo.
I always extend myself a little.
Okay, have you seen some people's toxicity testing look worse after starting Detox U because their detox is working better?
All the time. So that's why it doesn't make sense to test too soon. You want to give yourself a little window of 2, 3 months before the retest, the first retest, because that is actually what we expect. We There's no perfect testing. So remember, we always see a partial view of what is getting or being held in your body in terms of toxins. And when we optimize the pathways, we see more pretty soon after starting a support protocol for detoxification. So that's actually a great sign. So there's going to be a peak in the curve, and then you're going to see the reduction over time. Usually you hit the most significant part of the reduction around 3 months. It's important to continue the protocol for a little bit longer. I will say 6 months in total is my recommended usage of all these support products, because when you remain in that low toxic level is when your organs can repair. That can't be done properly if you're still managing and handling so many toxins. So you need to reduce that, and then when you get there, then you prolong the treatment a little bit longer, and that allows you to heal, which is so important.
Okay, great. If my client has very high mercury, but also has very high mycotoxins, which would you focus on first?
Mercury usually is the biggest red flag. It's because it impairs everything else. So mycotoxins, yes, they're important. But since they're more ubiquitous in the environment, you're always going to get them. Now, the good thing is that this protocol will take care of mycotoxins regardless. If you're using a more intentional protocol for heavy metals, you still have these binders in place, especially chitosan and activated charcoal and zeolite. Those three are major for mycotoxin binding. So even though you're more intentional trying to reduce heavy metals, you will reduce also other toxins that are circulating in your body just with the usage of the binder. So, but mercury creates such a huge challenge for your cells, for your immune system, and also for proper detoxification. I will focus on that first, and then we can transition to a different type of protocol afterwards. And I wouldn't be surprised that after 6 months of using, for example, the heavy metal focus bundle, you will see not only mercury being reduced, but also mycotoxins normalized or reduced significantly.
Can I instruct my patients to take the binder alongside the remover at the same time? You mentioned the binder has time release technology. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yes, I never like this 30 minutes, 1 hour after taking one product, take this other product. I forgot every single time. Like I couldn't. So that was a huge deal breaker for me. And again, we didn't have better options. Now, this binder is coated with a capsule that will open up with a 30 to 45 minutes delay, which is exactly the timing we need to create this binding system in place after we stimulated the organs that are removing or pushing out all these toxins from our cells. So it's completely safe. You can take both together at the same time, and you're going to get the benefits of both without issues.
Can you talk about mold focus? Is it intended for fungal colonization from mold exposure? Is it also used for yeast like Candida? Is it more microbial support, mycotoxin detox support, or both?
It's all of those things. I'm not really trying to overpromise anything here. It's just because the combination of botanicals, it's so comprehensive. So yes, you have a very good intentionality in terms of mold growth control, So if there's mold overgrowth, that's going to be handled. And the mycotoxin part also is supported because of this cardiovascular inflammatory support botanicals we added. But then we know that when mold is in place or mycotoxins are in place, there's a very intense damage into the microbiome, which creates these very inflammatory patterns. Well, you want to control that part too. And for that part, these botanicals, they also help controlling the overgrowth of certain microbes, including bacteria and even parasites. You have garlic there, you have clove there, you have antiparasitic botanicals there, and you also have viral control botanicals. Cistus incanus or creticus, it's a great antiviral on its own. So you have a very complex, comprehensive formula for microbial balancing. Now, this plus organ support from the remover, plus the binder activity. And if you're on the side, and I strongly recommend that, you using a spore based probiotic or any microbial support from a probiotic that you like, makes it super effective for balancing the microbiome at the same time.
Is this protocol actually comprehensive for a proper detoxification? I have created stacks in the past, but it usually requires 10 to 15 caps per day. So going down to only a couple is impressive.
Yeah, it is. It's that's exactly what we wanted to achieve. Uh, I did multiple protocols for detoxification support using different companies, different approaches, and again, nobody was really happy about them. And the thing is that we don't really question ourselves. Is this the only way? What is being done now is the best way possible to do this. And unfortunately, I saw not many people were questioning the ways, were just not complying, not agreeing with the method. They were not enjoying the process, but nobody's really thinking, well, this maybe can be done better, can be done more simplistically without losing efficiency. And through an extensive revision of the information we have available research-wise and ingredient properties, I saw the light. I saw that we could actually get these things done in a way more simple way and without losing the efficiency that is needed. The other thing is that, and this it's aligned with that question, we're so driven right now about potency. We think that more potency gives you more benefits. That's not real. The body grabs just what is needed. Everything else is pushed out. If you try to force it into the cell, actually might create more harm than good. I don't like that idea either. So again, our potency system, our delivery system, they have been developed for something that seems to be very linear, where the reality is that our membranes, they will receive the input up to a certain degree, and then everything else is going to be pushed out. And the actual biological activity of the cells doesn't require much of each of these molecules. So everything else is actually not going to give you more benefits. And on the side, if you push things, you can actually create a risky place for your receptors, because if you overwhelm receptors too much, instead of getting more out of them, more biological activity, you might fall in the place of shutting them down. And then you get nothing out of the cells. And we know that from HRT therapies, we know that happens with peptide therapy. So it's really the case for every single phytochemical botanical that we can use. We need to use just enough. And with that in mind, we formulated everything in potency, and it works. And we know it works because the reports, the feedback has been amazing. And we're conducting now more revisions, more trials, and everything becomes very positive. And the reason is because, again, we're just optimizing the receptor activity. We're optimizing biological pathways. We're not pushing or forcing or overwhelming systems. We can do that, absolutely. We shouldn't. That's my point.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Would you want to do this separate from the Microbiome Lab's detox protocols like the HU58, Mega IgG, or Megaspore?
Well, that's not really a detox protocol per se. It's a more microbial support, antigen binding protocol with immunoglobulins. Remember, endotoxins are literally antigens. They're modulated by the immune system, and the immunoglobulins bind those antigens and excrete them out of the body in an irreversible way. But it's not really related to exogenous toxins like xenobiotics, which they fall in a different place, in a different category, and they need a different type of management. So they actually have a very synergistic approach. Using both in conjunction, and you get a lot of things done. When you support the microbiome, you reduce the LPS circulating in the body, and at the same time, you reduce xenobiotic circulation and support the organ functionality. Magic happens. It's absolutely amazing, the blend of those two protocols combined. And probably you'll hear more about it in the future because I see and I know Microbiome Lab sees the synergy in this approach.
What tests have you seen most helpful for before and after a Detox U program to show progress?
Good question. There's out there a lot of companies testing for different type of toxins. We have real time, we have mosaic, we have vibrant. Depends a little bit of how much you want to expand and what you want to see. I don't really, I'm not really good endorsing anyone's testing because they all have their pros and cons. They all have their price point, and there might not be the perfect fit for everyone. I think they're all validated by CLIA, so they're all reputable, and you can use them as needed. Um, some toxins are more complicated to test for than others, and therefore I will say that depends on what you want to see. There's a certain limitation. Um, I like to get at least a high yield baseline measured beforehand, so I can keep a track on the progress and maybe decide that I need to extend the protocol a little bit longer, or measure if this is effective enough, or I need more support, or I'm falling short in a certain area. Um, Depending again what you want to do on with your approach in terms of detoxification. Um, the most important thing that I always emphasize in this area is that I do love to test, but it's not an obligation in terms of getting things done from a detoxification standpoint. Because reality is that now everyone has toxins in their system. Any grown up in this country has toxins. So at least on a general sense, we should. I think everyone will get benefit from using a general detoxification support once in a while, at least. But yes, definitely, I love to test. I think that's the best scenario possible. And if you can have access to any of the labs available, definitely great idea to establish a baseline. The thing is that there's so many toxins out there that is really a little bit expensive and complicated to test for all of them at once.
It is said that there are no tools today to remove micro and nanoplastics, and that these are Trojan horses for many other toxins coming into the body. What are your thoughts on micro and nanoplastic detoxification?
Yeah, it's tricky. We know we can improve the elimination of microplastics because the good news is that they do go through the typical pattern of detoxification pathways that we use for any other toxin. Nanoplastics are a little bit more tricky, Ken. When you get to a nanometric size particle, then your limiting rate factors are compromised. So your barriers actually they don't work as well. I said this when we start pushing nanohydroxyapatite in the mouth. Uh, so we don't really know, or we don't have much control where these particles are getting into, and we don't even know if that actually is going to be beneficial or not. So again, when it comes to nanometric size particles, I have my question marks on the table because of that reason, because we're not really working around our controlling mechanisms, especially membrane level control. Um, so that is a different realm in terms of managing and elimination. From standard microplastics, we know that they are handled again through our liver pathways and through the same pathways of cellular excretion. So if you optimize those systems, you should improve the elimination of them out of the body. And we have research about it available. You can do a quick Google search, and you will see how they're managed. And again, that's our best fighting chance. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's the best we can do.
Okay, let's ask this last question, then we can wrap up. I see more and more people showing up with elevated levels of barium. Have you seen this? What are the potential sources? Chemtrails?
Yes. God, I don't know if chemtrails alone. Uh, there's definitely a trending bioaccumulation in soil. This comes from different industrial processes. But my concern is this. I think that I don't want to point fingers and get controversial in this topic, because again, the sources can be multiple. So it will be very unfair for me to point out one critical source. The problem right now, and this is something that falls into a little bit of the politics in terms of management of toxins, is that a lot of things are not being managed with the considerations needed in terms of how much they bioaccumulate in the environment. That is my concern, that every little amount matters over time to create a higher expression of all these pollutants in the soil. And the problem is that also to get the organic certification label, you don't need to test the soil in advance. You need just to comply with not using anything while you're producing anything or planting anything in the soil. So we lose a little bit the vision of what we have in as a baseline to produce something in a good way. And also not excluding the fact that a lot of things are mobilized from one place to another through underground water and other channels. And so even if you're doing your best in terms of trying to make clean products, you're going to get some cross contamination. So again, unfortunately, nothing is perfect today, and that's why we fall short in our regulations and protective mechanisms from this area of the way that things are managed, and that's why everyone needs detoxification support once in a while, because you can do your best, you can try hard. I do, and I know I do, and I still get toxins. I'm not my blood levels, my urine levels are not pristine because I still breathe and eat foods that are contaminated to a certain degree. And there's going to be a certain buildup over time. But again, if you stay proactive, all these things can be managed properly. That's the most important thing, to be aware and to become proactive. Just do not think that this is happening to the person living next door. This is happening to every single one of us. And if we do something about it, we can stay and do our best to stay protected and resilient and avoid very complicated diseases down the road that we know are created, or at least we have more risk factors when we have all these toxins in place. So yes, barium is concerning, but so arsenic and all these things they just compound. I don't like to look at them just as a single narrow-sighted view. Just be mindful, everything matters in that sense. But I do agree that there are some reports saying that whatever is being used for certain purposes, environmental wise, they carry a lot of these heavy metals, unfortunately.
All right, we can wrap up there.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Love this conversation. This is, again, this is so important. This is for you, for your loved ones, and for anyone in your care. This is, I believe, and I can make the case, and I think I did make the case already, uh, that this is probably the most fundamental pillar of human health today. If you address this, the sky is the limit. Probably everything else you have in your toolbox will work or will work better. But if you don't have this removed or reduced out of your system, it's a huge block for anything else to work properly. So keep that in mind when you do any of your protocols or you're taking care of your health. And I promise you, this could be the single most impactful element you can incorporate to move forward and improve your health. Thank you for joining us, and we'll have another one soon in the month or so. And so stay tuned, and we will give you updates about the next topic. And thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you very soon.
Bye, everyone.